I heard a gentleman on one of the talk show things several weeks ago. His name is David Williams. And, you know, when you get these intuitive things about people, like, say, well, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And so David's on the line. David, good morning. You're in North Carolina?
Yes, Patrick, I am. It's a very small town of about 1,000 people.
And you're doing well. Thanks for doing a little thing on Memorial Day for us. David, I don't generally start like this because it's kind of a dumb way to do a radio show, but I'm going to do it anyway because I didn't get a lot of information. About a little bit about yourself. You've been at this idea of freedom, liberty, real history, Constitution, who we are for, do I understand, about 15 years?
Actually, about 12 years.
Yeah.
Not quite that long. Started around 1998.
And when you do this kind of research, David Williams, how do you know what you're reading and means anything? In other words, if you have a preconceived notion of what you're looking for, can you not go down rabbit holes and you think you know what I mean? I'm saying this with respect, but I'm real curious about this when you start looking at these kinds of things. How do you tell David Williams that what the information you're getting is, say, truth or accurate?
That's a very good question, Patrick, because there is a lot of misinformation out. And actually, from the time we're born, we're given a description of the world. And we're also asked not to question that description of the world. And so for me, once I started learning that what I had learned was not true, especially in terms of history, then I completely emptied my mind and said, okay, if what I learned in the school system, whether it was from some 25-year-old woman that was just out of college or some 50-year-old man who had been at the high school for 25 years, I forgot what I learned. I just quit. Whatever they taught me had to be wrong if it was not matching up with what I could read simply in black ink on white paper. And not that that's necessarily true, but you know what I mean? It's like confirmed with more than one witness of what you're looking at. And I decided for myself that the real history teacher had to be those that were closest to the event. So, for instance, let's say in United States history, Patrick Henry was there at the time of signing of Articles of Confederation, Constitutions, Declarations, and those things. And there was a lot of talk in school. They'll tell you that they wrote the Federalist Papers and they wrote the Anti-Federalist Papers. I decided to go read that stuff.
And you're able to understand it?
Yes, absolutely. It's not that hard to understand. Now, their writings back then are written at a higher grade level than they are today. I think this is part of our culture and part of society that we always assume that people are getting smarter and that we are, quote, evolving. And I didn't make that presupposition because one of the things I had read by Edmund Burke about the colonists in 1765 was that they were reading at a 17th grade level and that only one person in 200 was illiterate.
Really?
Yes, and I was actually shocked.
Yeah, we had a gentleman on the air several months ago, David Williams, Bill Thornton, who suggests the same thing. He's got a website about the Constitution and stuff. Well, you sent me a very interesting audio-visual. I'd love to put that on our website. I don't know if we'd be able to do that or if you'd agree to that, but where people can actually read along with the documents and then hear what you're talking about. And pretty fascinating. I didn't watch it all, but about, maybe 45 minutes of it this morning, David. And your main contention is a big contention. And it is that since now you correct me if I'm wrong because I'm new at this, David, okay? If I understand it correctly, you're saying that since we were not signatories, you and I didn't actually sign our name on this thing we call the Constitution, that it really doesn't apply to us. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
This is the way it's looked at in international law.
International law. So and then we'll get into that. But how can you? Let's see. What if you're wrong about that? Wouldn't your whole, and I'm once again saying this with all respect, what if you're wrong about that? Would you not your whole argument and your whole presentation be moot? Can you prove that that is correct? Because I mentioned that to several people who I thought were pretty well founded in the Constitution, that I was going to talk to you, and they said, well, what's he talk about? And I said, well, the signatory thing, David, and they said, well, that's crazy because it says we the people, we are one of the people. So how do you respond to that?
Well, here again, the education system back then was different than it is today, and these men were more studied and learned in everything. In other words, for instance, let me just state this. Most of these men were businessmen. Mm-hmm. Actually, they were all businessmen. Mm-hmm. There was no such thing as any businessman back then admitting that he did not know the law. That would never occur. Every single one of them knew the law, and they knew the law of nations. I mentioned international law, and they knew the law of nations, and specifically if you read the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8, it said that the powers of the Congress were such that they had the right to define and punish piracies on the high seas and violations of the law of nations.
Okay, we're going to get into the law of nations and see what that is. So, once again, though, your argument about the signatory idea. Why is it that if Patrick and you and people listening did not sign this thing, then it really doesn't apply to us? Is that your argument?
Well, that is the argument, and I'll go specifically into what I call the rules of capitalization.
Okay.
And I have a test that someone sent to me on my into my email, that is a 8th grade test from 1865, and it asked the question to explain the 9 rules of capitalization. Well, I never learned 9 rules of capitalization in the public school system today.
I don't think any of us did.
And one of the things that I found in my research in 1999, I was doing some research on the web, and something popped up, and it said the 7 deadly NIMS, and I'm looking at it going, what is this? The 7 deadly NIMS. And when I started doing the research on this, one of those NIMS is called a capital-NIM, mm-hmm. which means when they capitalize a word in the middle of a sentence, it's a specific word, it's a specific meaning. It does not mean everyone. It becomes a proper noun.
Proper noun.
Instead of being just general noun that is a generalization.
And so we the people in the Constitution, David, is capitalized?
Yes, it is. And
okay.
It's very specifically written. And if you look at the style of writing, a lot of people talk about the Founding Fathers being Masons. The style of writing is very much Masonic. You just look at the style of the letters.
Okay,
this is not normal writing like you and I would be used to.
Okay, so they say we the people, they capitalize people, and it means just them and not all people because it's capitalized?
Well, there's many, for instances, you can use.
Go ahead and give us
the
some.
English language, like the word job. That's a general word, but if we capitalize that, we now have Job, which becomes a specific man.
Okay.
The word polish and the word Polish. Now, we think that this doesn't mean anything, but words mean things. Words are the most important thing you can learn. As I did my etymology studies, I found a book by Fred Funk, and the forward in the book, there was a quotation in there. It said, learn words and learn them very well. You're going to be using them the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and most of us, your host included, we don't really know spit about what words mean.
Well, let me give you one word real quick, and this is, since this pertains to law, if you look at Article 6, Clause 2, it said that this Constitution, all laws made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made under the authority of the United States, and all future treaties made under the authority, shall be supreme law of the land. So it's not just the Constitution that's supreme law of the land, it's all international treaties. This is specifically what they said.
Wow. So you read that to say it's all international treaties are laws in this land, the United States?
It's true globally. When you start learning international